We're here with Speaker-designate Kurt Zellers, and first off, Kurt, congratulations on the new title.
Oh, thank you to you, but thanks to my colleagues, especially the House Republican Caucus.
How's it feel?
It's a little overwhelming right now. It's kind of like taking a drink out of the fire hydrant, but you know, I think we've got such a great class of freshmen. You know, at 33 strong, it's a huge class. But it's also, I mean, there's some remarkable people that are coming in here that whether you're Democrat or Republican, it doesn't matter. The body is going to be better for them being here with us.
What is it that you bring to the Speaker's chair?
You know, I'd say probably a good blend, even though I come from, you know, an expanding exurb or, you know, a growing suburb in Maple Grove. I grew up on a farm, so, you know, we were having a discussion in there about metro-rural, and as we always do in caucus, but also on the House floor. And, you know, there's a lot of folks in there that were surprised to find out that the town that my great-grandfather helped found is now gone. You know, the elevator that he built and ran for decades was burned down about 5 years ago. So, you know, it's those maybe talked about or undiscussed issues that some people don't understand. That well, he really does, and I could go out and drive a tractor right now for Paul Anderson or Torkelson. You know, Torkelson probably because he has John Deere's, Anderson has Case. So you know, it's a big mix up there. It's like being a Viking and a Packer fan. But I think that's a perspective that I bring, that maybe from being from the metropolitan area, that I understand, you know, what it's like in rural Minnesota, what it means to help our agricultural economy expand, because there's a lot of opportunity there for us.
And wasn't it your grandpa's plight that kind of got you involved in the whole political thing?
Yeah, it was my, you know, I actually got to ask this in debate. Somebody said, well, why do you run? You know, what? And I thought about it for a minute. You know, my grandpa, when as a kid, and I get to drive around and go out and work in the field with him a lot. And this was way long time ago, you know, late 70s, early 80s. He took me out and said, you know, see that plot over there? You know, those cattails are now off limits. That's a wetland now. Because somebody from the government came out here and said that that's a wetland. Now we can't farm it for the next 3 years. And what my grandpa explained to me, as a kid, I didn't, you know, okay, so you don't drive the tractor down there. But what my grandpa explained to me is, you know, Kurt, that's kids, you know, that's land that we can't produce grain on, that we can't feed kids, we can't grow sunflowers, wheat, barley, whatever it is. We're not going to be able to produce something for people to eat. He said, so it might be the government trying to do the right thing. He said, but it's a wet spring. That stuff would normally would drain off by, you know, June. It'll be dry there. He said the government shouldn't be coming in here telling us what is and what isn't farmable. He said that's for us to decide. Because we're the farmers, they're the government. And it was, you know, early on, and I wasn't active in politics in high school, and only after college I got real involved. But looking back now, it's probably how you know, how one of those things that, you know, when your grandpa tells you something as a little boy, you always listen, and you hopefully you learn. It's something that really stuck with me.
Yeah. Now you worked for Senator Rod Grams for a while, and then you were in the House caucus here for a while, but just as a communications guy, and now here we are 8 years later, and you're running the show.
Yeah, well, you know, and I've been in and out of politics a couple of times, working in the private sector. You know, worked for public relation firms as a farm kid who can write a press release. You know, there's a couple companies around that actually like that. So, and, you know, we use my folks' farm in a lot of cases with a couple of our clients to, you know, take photos of crops and stuff and write some of the brochures and stuff. So yeah, it was a great experience. You know, the things that I learned in politics, to see how they convert over into the real world. And you know, when you're an account manager in a public relations firm, you work on billable hours. So you got to account for every 15 minutes of your work. You know, that's something we're not here in government. We're not used to doing. So it's a great experience. It really gives you a good blend. And you know, in a lot of cases, I've also you know, I've suffered with a lot of other Minnesotans when it comes to job loss. You know. There's a really easy way to find out when the economy starts going down or taking a downturn. Public relations and marketing guys are always the first to go. So I actually, you know, went through that experience. And you know, when you go to your constituents and they say, you don't know what it's like to lose your job, and I can say, yeah, I sure do. I mean, I know what it's like to have that conversation at home with your family and say, you know what, honey, we're not going to have an income. You know, we're going to have to make some decisions. You know, maybe we aren't going to be able to go to the movies. We'll go to Redbox. You know, we'll get microwave popcorn instead of going to a movie. But I think it gives me a different perspective that, you know, a lot of folks around Minnesota feel as well.
Yeah. You mentioned your wife, and you're married. You've got a couple of young kids. How does that all play into this, and how are you going to have time for them?
Well, yeah, we've been doing a pretty good job so far. My wife's a public school teacher, so in the summers, you know, she gets to spend time with our kids in the summer, and we work on quality, you know, quality time always, but you know, quantity is where we'll maybe be at a little bit of a deficit now. But we have great time together, and the moments you do spend together are great. We've always, this has been either Democrat or Republican, a family-friendly legislature. You know, our kids always come down to the House floor. You know, my Margaret Kelleher, when I got elected, Speaker Kelleher actually had my son and daughter, you know, bang the gavel to start the session when I first got sworn in. So, you know, we're going to make sure that it's family-friendly as well. But we work on quality and maybe not necessarily quantity.
And you mentioned, as we sit here today, it's a deer hunting opener, and you said you'd rather almost be out in a field sometime, wouldn't you? Yeah. Just to get away for a little bit?
Yeah, you know, it's something that comes up afterwards. You know, luckily the pheasants, you know, the water doesn't matter if lakes freeze for pheasant hunting, so we will get out. I think it's a good thing to be of sound mind, but also a sound body, so we'll get out and do some hunting this fall. Maybe some of my colleagues go with, but you know, do exactly what every other Minnesotan does. You know, that's why we live here. You know, we like that change of seasons, but we just love to be in the outdoors, whether it's, you know, going the trails or going hunting or, you know, fall fishing. Something I really enjoy, and it really brings good balance to, you know, we're down here locked in rooms for hours and hours on end. It's really good to get outside and spend a little time in fresh air.
Let's go back a few nights. Election night, you guys enter the night, you're 40 seats down, you come out of it with a 10-seat lead. What happened?
Well, good question.
Did you expect it?
No, I mean, we didn't expect, you know, some of the races were real surprises, but, you know, there were a lot of races where, you know, we've been on the other side of this for the last, you know, 2 elections, almost 3 elections, where it's 30 seats, it's 87, or, you know, 30 votes, it's 87 votes, it's 112 votes, yeah, where it just didn't quite go our way. I really give all the credit to our candidates. We have, in some cases, just phenomenal candidates that, you know, in the past have said no to us. We haven't actually have a candidate that said no to, you know, easy to say no to me or to you know, any of our caucus members, but when Governor Pawlenty called and asked him to run, he said, you know what, I don't think it's the right time for me. So we bring in our best closer and he still says no, but you know, one of our members, Tim Kelly, was able to go and talk to him. They have a similar business, could explain to him what, you know, could expect down here. So I really, it's the quality of our candidates. We had folks that 2 years ago said, look, I have a county commission term that I promised for 4 years I'd fulfill. I'm not going to run this time, but I'll run in 2 years. They kept their commitment to their voters, but also kept their commitment to us as well. So I think that really, by far and away, it's the quality of our candidates, that they just fit the district maybe a little bit better than the incumbent, or in some of the open seats, or a better fit for that district than, you know, maybe their Democrat opponent or independent opponent.
And you look at your candidates, I think it was Rich Murray you were referencing that even turned down Governor Pawlenty, but then you look at a guy like, you've got a Brandon Peterson, I think it's what, 24, you know, you've got, you know, John Kreitz, a lot of people know his story, you know, Iraq veteran, all that, but then you've got some people that have had, you know, some greater life experiences too. Yeah. I mean, how much is that going to add to this caucus?
Well, I think it's actually one of probably the strongest part of our caucus is we have that great group. You know, Dave Hancock, who's up in the far northwest corner of Minnesota as well, has been a business owner up in that area literally for decades. You know, there was a name, D&D Dave, I think it was the name of his tire company, or, you know, everybody called him R&D Dave, that's what it was, and that was the name of his tire and repair company. So you have a pillar of the community like that, and we actually, in all honesty, went and sought those kind of folks out. You know, we went to the people that weren't the first to raise their hand. In fact, we're probably the first to say no, or to say no, go to get somebody else. And in that, you find those quality candidates. But it's a fantastic diversity. You know, young families. You know, Brandon and his wife are expecting. You know, Tim Sanders. We have folks on that end of the spectrum. And then we have folks like, you know, Dave Hancock and Roger Crawford, who have grandkids, who have a different perspective on things. And that's what's going to make us just a phenomenal. It's going to make us a better body, but it's also going to make us a better caucus. And to add 2 economists in one fell swoop, that's phenomenal too. We had both Kurt Bills and then King Banyan, 2 you know, very respected and very well-versed economists. You know, when your car breaks down, you don't take it to your florist. You take it to a mechanic. Well, we're bringing 2 mechanics into the Capitol to help us fix the economy and help us turn things around.
And, you know, you had some candidates, you were able to knock off some long time and powerful DFLers. I think of like a Lawrence Solberg, an Al Junkie, a Bernie Leader. Yeah. That really says something as well, doesn't it? Yeah, and it says something about the quality of the candidates too. You know, Carolyn McElfactrick has been running, you know, this is her 2nd time running. You learn a lot that first time, but you look back and you think, oh, I really wish I would have done this, or I would have went to that precinct last instead of this precinct. And then Bruce Vogel, again, another local business owner. You know, when I was down at a family reunion down in Green Lake, I talked to the local resort owner, and he said, "Oh yeah," he goes, "Bruce is a great guy." He goes, "I don't know why you guys didn't ask him to run earlier." Well, it's just those kind of things that, you know, you have to catch those breaks, or you have to have just the right candidate at just the right time. And
Bruce is a very well-known member, and also again another pillar of his community, not only in his church but in his work in the city and work in the county. So you find those right races where they just fit right, and in a lot of these cases there were some really phenomenal candidates that pulled off just Herculean upsets.
Is there any concern about some of these results being overturned? And I think there's what, 5 within 130 votes, something like that.
Yeah, I think there's maybe 3 to 4 that'll actually trigger an automatic recount. Right. After the recount we had 2 years ago, I don't know, but usually the way history goes, because we've been on the wrong side of this too many times, whoever wins on election day, usually their margin only increases after the election. So I think that's been our history, at least here in the House, because like I said, we've been on the other side of that too many times.
We mentioned the recount, obviously for the state's top official, Mark Dayton, Tom Emmer, going to be involved in a recount, and obviously you guys still think Emmer's going to come through. If he doesn't, how do you work with the Dayton administration? DFL are there, Republican House, Republican Senate?
Yeah, well, and that's quite honestly the shocking thing is the Republican House and Republican Senate. Quite honestly, we're going to work on the things that we agree on. And I take Senator Dayton, I take my friend Tom Emmer at his word, whether either one of them, whoever prevails, that they want to work on whatever issue that will bring jobs back to the state, that'll help our business owners here expand and grow our economy. Not only helping the taxpayers. There's nothing better for somebody who's unemployed than a job. So Governor Dayton, if it is him, or Governor Emmer, both have said that that's going to be their #1 focus. That's our focus as well. That's what our candidates. We talked about them today. With here's what you remember. You have a scrapbook of your literature that you ran on. So when you go back home, you remember that it was about jobs, it was the economy, it was living within our means, and that's what we'll focus on. Senator Dayton has said that that's something that he is focused solely on. The tax issue is something we're going to just fundamentally disagree about, but that's for later on in the process.
Right. Is it safe to say tax increase might be dead on arrival?
I wouldn't say dead on arrival, but I would say that I think the taxpayers of the state spoke very loudly, and what we looked at least from the initial part of Senator Dayton's plan, the campaign trail, that's going to hit small business owners, people that file as an S Corp, an LLC, an LLP. They file their business and their income taxes together. Those folks can't afford another tax increase, because it's not a matter of taking a little bit less money out of their pocket or their checkbook. They're looking at taking away a job. They're looking at selling off a piece of equipment. They're looking at having to shut their business down and move to another state. So I just think that's the voters have made that decision. I think that's where we'll stand as well. If we can help expand the economy, it's going to be better for us all in the long run.
We're looking roughly a $6 billion deficit going into the biennium, and of course there's a forecast yet to come here in early December, but is there anything that Republican caucus will keep off limits like Governor Plenty did with like K-12 and the veterans?
Sure. K-12, absolutely. Our developmentally disabled, those that are in nursing homes. Protecting and providing for our most vulnerable in society has always been our priorities. We've worked on that as a caucus bipartisanly with the governor's office. And then it's going to be about prioritization. If, as you said, there's going to be that forecast coming in November, what we've seen so far is that, if the economy kind of clunks along like it has, and we've actually seen a slight uptick here in Minnesota, we're going to collect $33 billion in the next biennium. We've spent $30 billion this time, so we're going to have more money to spend, about 7 to 8% on, just getting real technical. So we're going to have a lot more money to spend this next time. Where you get into that budget deficit is if you want to go back to the old spending levels. And I don't think there's a business owner in the state says that he's back, he or she are spending at 2009 or 2010 levels. Almost everybody's back to 2002 or 2003 levels. So it's going to be about prioritization. We're going to take care of, as you said, education, but also our developmentally disabled, those that can't provide for themselves, in nursing homes. And then first and foremost, though, we're going to make sure people are not only safe in their homes, but that they feel secure. It's one thing to be safe, to get in, lock your doors, and lock everything outside, but we want you to feel secure while you're in your home as well.
I think your thoughts, maybe a couple other issues. Bonding bill, potentially. I know Republicans generally seek less than the DFL does. Any thoughts this early on something like that?
I think it's real important, especially after what we've seen at the federal government level with, even President Obama admitting that some of these shovel-ready products weren't necessarily shovel-ready. They may have been shovel-handy, but not shovel-ready. So, and what we saw when we went through the bonding bill last spring was that there were a lot of unlet bonds. So we've approved the project. We said, here's how much you can get. Now, bring us back the plans. We'll give you the money. But there's a lot of unspent money out there. So before we go out and make future commitments, and if after a year or 2 years you haven't been able to get your project up and running and get the matching funds you need, maybe it's not the right project then. So we pull back those projects that have not been started yet before we start with new projects. I think that'd be our first place to start. But again, that's first you got to get an idea of what's out there, and then also get an idea what the federal government's going to do too.
What about gambling revenues? We've heard Dick Day's been saying it was a great election for the Racino, for example, and others have said slots here and there. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think that it's also up to the two governor candidates, as well. I think Senator Dayton said he's in favor of it. I'm not sure where Tom Emmer has been, on the issue as a whole. But we don't see our problem down here as a revenue problem. We see it as a spending problem. So if we live within our means, we're not going to need to have a whole bunch of new revenue. Now, if there are priorities in government that aren't being funded at the current levels, that's something for the governor to make a decision on. But we're focused on jobs and the economy, and if it's not going to do something to help our business owners to get government off their backs, out of their pockets, and out of their way, that's going to be our #1 priority. That's what we're going to start with, and we'll get to some of these other things later on.
Yeah. We are in football season. Does the Viking Stadium fit into that whole jobs mentality?
Well, I think so. Even if we're minus a coach or a couple of players here and there. No, I'm not going to, as a former football coach myself and college football player, I won't make any judgments on the team, but I'm just saying you got a receiver that, but it's something that, we worked in a bipartisan way last session with Representative Atkins and Hoppe and Lanning, a lot of folks from both sides of the aisle looking at a solution. So I do think so, but again, we're going to have to balance the budget first and foremost. We're going to have to look to help get our economy going again. But you can see from what the Gopher Stadium and what the Twins' new stadium produced when it came to not only good private sector jobs, but some union jobs as well. And we think another great way to do that is also with the nuclear moratorium, lifting that just so that we can see if it's possible. We're not going to build 3 Mile Island tomorrow, but we just need to see if it's possible, and then look at, there's some examples around the country where this has started, and that is a real long-term jobs program that would be something that we absolutely should be looking at this year.
Final one I'll ask is on like the social issues. We saw the anti-gay marriage folks have come out and said, oh, this is a great election for us as well, and now we're going to get this thing on the ballot for 2012. And is the social issues something that are going to be addressed, or will be right behind jobs in the economy or anything?
Again, jobs in the economy. I mean, you hate to sound like a broken record here, but if that is something you care about, if it's something you want to work through in your church or in your synagogue or in your mosque, you can't get there if you don't have a job. It's hard to buy a car if you don't have a job. It's hard to be a part of an organization. It's hard to tithe to your church or whatever your religious organization is if you don't have a job. So that's our first and foremost focus. It has been for our candidates out on the campaign trail. I think that's what the voters responded to. That's when you can tell with our candidates when that was their message. When their opponents started going after them on personal attacks, that's where a lot of these races broke. So that's our first and foremost focus. We want to make sure that Minnesota is competitive. I'd love to run an ad in Sioux Falls, South Dakota saying, come on back to Minnesota. We're open for business. We're fixing things here. We're not quite there yet, but come on back. Give us a look. And then if we get going, really get ahead of steam, we'll go start running some ads in Texas saying, sure, you can be down here and not have have income taxes, but Minnesota is a great opportunity. So that's going to be our focus. It always has been, and it's something that we think is a first priority for the vast, vast majority of not only Republican voters, independent voters, but Democrat voters.
So before too long, we'll have Kurt Zellers on the radio saying, come on back from Sioux Falls to go against their tourism guy that we hear all the time.
You bet. Amy Koch and I and Governor Emmer, Governor Dayton, we'll have a choir on there, and we'll be running ads in Sioux Falls saying, that development director's been lying to you. Come on back. We've got a great economy here in Minnesota. Come check us out, and while you're here, go to a Twins game or see a Vikings game if you can stomach it.
You mentioned Amy Koch. She was just named the Senate Majority Leader. I think it was yesterday. Michelle Fischbach's going to be the Senate President now. How well do you work with those two?
Oh, great. I mean, Dave Singeman and I worked well together as a minority team. Amy's been fantastic. We crossed paths many, many times on the campaign trail, on some of the fly-arounds as well when we were going from city to city to city. Amy she's a great friend. She is a really good strategist. Sorry, George Bush. But no, she's got not only does she have a good sense for metro versus urban, you know, those kind of traditional splits, but Amy's, she's got a great strategic thinking mind, but she also understands that balance we need to bring, and also living within her means. And I'm real excited to work with Amy. She's a good friend, and she's, like I said, she's got a big job ahead of her. I mean, no pressure. First time in 30 plus years, but hey, I think she's up to the task. I think she'll do a great job, and I'm very proud to have her as a good team working together. I really think we're going to do a lot of good things to get Minnesota moving forward again, get our economy back on track, and really start to lead the recovery, not just wait for it like everybody else.
You're going to replace Margaret Anderson Keller as the House Speaker. Are there things from Margaret that you learned that you can take when you take over the gavel?
Absolutely. One of the things we learned real fast, and something that I'm going to absolutely, one of the first things we do is to make sure that allow the minority as much time as they want for amendments, for speeches, to make their point. I mean, that's why people put Democrats and Republicans in charge. They don't want everybody to get along. Unicamerals for Nebraska, not for Minnesota. We like a good spirited debate, and that's why democracy is this democracy that we have here in the country, but also in Minnesota, it's the best thing in the world. Sure, it's messy and it's ugly, and sometimes it's not a tickle fight. Somebody's going to get a bloody nose every so often, but we're going to absolutely allow those folks to have as much time, as much that they need to make their points, to make their arguments. We think we can absolutely have that discussion, and at the end of the day, we'll prevail. But that's the first and foremost thing that we think. And then probably doing like a lot of business owners across the state have had to do, families have had to do, we're going to streamline government. And that starts right here in our own backyard. We're not going to have as many committees. We're not going to be here as many days, taking up time, taking up staff time, wasting paper. I know it sounds kind of trivial, but every time we're here in a committee hearing, there's a lot of paper that gets used, but a lot of staff time that gets used. We think we can be a little more efficient and effective in the way we run government.
Any feelings on what the committee number is going to be sitting at once all is said and done? I think we're close to what, 40 with the DFL, with subcommittees and divisions and all that.
I think out of the 87 members, 83 of them had a gavel or some sort of chair or commission. So, I'm going to work really closely with Amy. We had to, it's all kind of happened, in the last couple of days here, yeah. So we know who the leaders are, but it is a wonderful opportunity for us, for Amy and I to get together with Matt and whoever their deputy leader is going to be, and line up those committees. And it was something that I actually, had proposed to Senator Pogamiller and Senator Senjum in the past, that why do we have this? Looks like a plate of spaghetti spilled out on the table. Why don't we line them up? Tax committee and tax committee, jobs and jobs, education and education. So it'll be a great opportunity for us, and Amy and Matt and I are actually going to sit down this afternoon to start that process. It's a beautiful Saturday afternoon outside, but we've got work to do. There's people that don't have jobs in Minnesota, and it's our responsibility to try to help them get back to work. So we're going to sit down. We'll get that process laid out so that we have a good idea as to how they can match up, and then start the hearings and be very aggressive with our schedule as well.
We asked we met with Representative Thiessen yesterday, and we were telling him, and one of the things I liked about him and you both seem to be guys that you don't care what side of the aisle a good idea comes from. If it's a good idea, let's go forward. Yeah. I mean, how much is that going to help in 2011, 2012?
Oh, I think it really is going to be critical. I think the voters have given everybody kind of, they gave the president his due. Now they're going to give us a shot, both state here in Minnesota, but also on the national level. And I think it's a probationary period. That's the way I see it. We ran on what we would do if we got we were put in charge. We're going to live by exactly what we said we were going to do. So I think a good idea. I mean, I've been very lucky. Joe Atkins was the chair of Commerce Committee. I was the minority lead on that. When the roles were reversed and he was the minority lead and we were in the majority, both Joe and I, we had A to Z and Z to A bills. So when you actually can go back and say to somebody, hey, remember when we sponsored that bill together? I think actions speak a lot louder than words. So, working together on those bills, if it's a good idea, if it's something that's going to, again, help move our economy forward, help us, be more productive here in Minnesota, absolutely in favor of it. Our party, nor theirs, nor the independent party has exclusive rights on good ideas here in the state. So we really will work together, no matter whose idea it is, and bring that to the forefront, and pass it first and foremost. Not wait for it to, make its way through this, labyrinth of committees and hearings and subcommittees. We're going to make it an easy process, especially not for us, but also for the voters. The average Minnesotan that wants to come down here and watch how their government works, we want to make sure it's an easy process. Yeah, there's places, it's hard to find an office, but you should know that if you're coming down here to see a public safety bill, you know where the Public Safety Committee meets and when it meets. So, you know, from the voters of the state as well, so they got an idea what, you know, they want to come down here, and we've seen a pretty intense move to get involved in what your government's doing. So we're going to make it really easy for folks to come down and be a part of their government.
Final question I've got for you. You guys are in charge. Redistricting is coming up. What does that mean as for the Republicans?
Well, it's a huge responsibility, especially, you know, we were, you know, I think we were pretty darn close to losing a congressional seat. I think we're going to be okay now. I think we're going to actually have an opportunity to keep our seats and then to, you know, redraw them. You know, in a lot of cases, my seatmate, Representative Pepin out in Maple Grove, she's got part of Maple Grove, Rogers, Corcoran, Hassan. She had, I think, almost 30,000 people vote for her alone. Our districts are only supposed to be 35,000 people combined. So you got to figure that's a lot of people that, you know, these districts grow so fast, you know, and so big that it's going to be good, and it's going to bring some continuity. So when folks look at that, and it'll make it a little easier to have your government closer to you. So that's going to be our first and foremost focus when it comes to redistricting, making sure that, you know, these sizes are a lot more proportional so that you don't have, you know, these huge swings where somebody's got 28,000 and somebody's got 42,000 in their district.
Unfortunately for those in greater Minnesota, it might mean greater geographic size.
Right, and that's something that, you know, in looking at too, you know, do you run them north, south, east, west? You know, can you make it a bigger square versus a rectangle? Those are things that we're going to be very, very cognizant of as well, because we want to make sure that it's easy for you to serve your constituents, so you don't have to grow. I think Dan Fabian, our incoming member from 1A, said it's about 125 miles from one end to the other of his district. Well, let's make that a square instead of a rectangle, but, you know, sometimes that's easier said than done too.
Sure. As always, I'd like to give you a final opportunity if there's anything else you'd like to add.
No, I don't think so. I think it works.
All right, well, Speaker-designate Kurt Zellers, we thank you for your time and best of luck in the upcoming session.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the time too.